Hello everyone, my name is Chinmay and welcome to this series called Let's Map with OSM. In this series, we'll be exploring OpenStreetMap through a slightly different lens. What we will be doing is essentially walking through OpenStreetMap, and I'll be picking an area. I'll be mapping every single thing that I see in it seems to be of interest, and we'll have some commentary on the way. The series is a bit different to the rest of the videos that you'll see online, which are basically tutorials about how to map certain features like buildings or roads. If you are new to OpenStreetMap and you don't really understand how it works, I believe those are the places where you should go first. I will put some links in the description to get you started. If you're here, you're basically just probably curious about OpenStreetMap, or you're from a place where you want to see how other contributors contribute to OpenStreetMap, in which case this is the perfect place to be. I will be using the JOSM editor, which is a Java OpenStreetMap editor, for the purposes of this series. I will not be using ID editor unless the situation demands it. Now, don't get me wrong, ID is a wonderful, wonderful editor. I still use it from a day-to-day basis for a bunch of different tasks, and especially if I'm on the move and I need to quickly fire up OSM to make some edits, ID is my default go-to. That being said, JOSM provides a lot of different functionalities. The plugin ecosystem is rich. There are different paint styles. The sheer flexibility with which I can edit OSM is much, much greater on JOSM, and that is why I will use JOSM as my main tool. If you want to take inspiration from this series and you want to use OSM in a similar way, or you just want to go and map, please feel free to use whatever editor you want to use. There's no restriction, but hey, JOSM represent. So let's get started. So what we're going to do is, first, let's just dive in and pick an area which we want to map. Now, there are multiple ways in which you can do this. One is probably you can go to places like Map Roulette or the Hot Tasking Manager if you want to map specific features for specific causes, like resolving missing roads, or wrongly mapped highways or turn restrictions, or you want to add buildings or settlements for disaster relief and so on. I will not go into that because the purpose of this series is completely different. So once you fired up JOSM, or if you click on the download button, it'll show you the last area which you were probably looking at. Now, there are a lot of debates about armchair mapping and whether you should or should not do it. I have my own views upon it, and if you go by the strict ethos that I should only map what I know and where I live or interact with, I will be mapping my cities and my neighborhood, and that's it. And then my contributions to OpenStreetMap would be limited. However, the way I look at it is, look, I've been around this world for a while now. I've been places, I've observed things, and there's a lot of information that I have collected over here as a human being who resides in this world, which I can use to successfully interpret what I see. And what I see will be satellite imagery or aerial imagery, and I will use my experience and my powers of interpretation to convert what I see into an actual usable map, which can be then enhanced by someone who knows a bit better than me, which will probably be someone who lives in that particular area and can add in details which I cannot sufficiently interpret using the imagery that I see, right? So the first thing is to get an area to work with. The best way to do that is to just figure out all these empty spaces and just go in and start editing, right? Because if it's an empty space, it's just beige in color, it means that there's not enough information there, because, clearly in a country that is as populated as India, you won't just have these vacant areas where there's absolutely nothing. There's no grassland, there's no farmland, there's no forest, there's no civilized area, or so there's no civilization there. There are no buildings. It's highly unlikely. So if it's an empty area, it basically means that it's not been mapped yet. So this looks like a good area to map. It's in the Konkan. The Konkan, if you don't know, is the western coast of India, which is dotted with these picturesque villages, cliffs, beaches, with the wetlands, marshlands, salt pans, and farmlands, grasslands. It's a wide widely varied ecosystem, and this particular area near Veda seems to be quite empty. So I'm going to hedge my bets and say that this area is not as empty as it seems to be. So let's just download this. So I'll just create a bounding box. Now I'm not sure whether OSM or JOSM will allow me to download an area this big, but let's give it a shot. If it doesn't allow us, let's choose a smaller area. Okay, and there you go. It allowed me to get this whole peninsula in. All right, so over here, I can see the default data that is there, but I'm not particularly happy with the paint style. I think this is a default JOSM paint style. It's not bad, but it can be better. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Now, let me just go through the imagery tab and I'll say Bing. The moment I put my imagery, you can see that it's, some of the things that need to be highlighted are not, and some of the, it could be better. So I am a big fan of the paint style that Apple has put out. They've published it on the GitHub repository, and you can add your own paint styles by creating XML files and so on in JOSM. So if you're so inclined, that you want the specific features that you edit to be highlighted in a particular way, that's the way you should go. So if you go to the preferences, you will see different tabs on the left. Now the Mac interface over here, I don't know, it could be better because you couldn't really see the labels, only the icons, but the Windows interface for JOSM is much better. But if you go down through this, you'll eventually land up on paint styles. If I go to active styles, and if I click add a new style, I'll be able to add my own style. So either I can upload a file over here, or I can enter the URLs. I've got the Apple one already in place, I believe, and I don't. Let me just go here. So this is the Apple paint style GitHub. So over here, that's the JOSM paint style by Apple. I'll add the link to this in the description and maybe over here on the screen as well. So for installation, what they say is you copy this particular link. You can get this basically from the downloads as well, but it's okay. I just use this link because they've made it easy for me. And then I'll just add it in my active styles. So I'll call it Apple and I'll set it to active. There you go. So I'll just move it up in the hierarchy so that it's the one that's visible by default. And there you go. All right. Okay. So there you go. So now we're a bit set. I'm happy with what we have. So let's go around exploring what we already have on the map, and then we'll figure out what to edit. So over here, you can see the township of Bancourt. Now, this is the problem with a lot of different villages. So if you can see, the imagery is a bit distorted. So mapping this is going to be slightly challenging because, this should be a rectangle, right? This is a house. It should be a rectangle. It seems to be slightly warped, like a parallelogram. But what we'll do is we'll try to give the best interpretation of it as possible. The buildings are also quite closely spaced together in particular areas. So we'll find it a bit challenging to map these. All right. Some of the coastline is it needs adjustment. So you can see that the coastline is actually quite well defined. It's got a lot of protrusions here and there, which are probably jetties or something of the sort, or built up areas that the locals have constructed. But the coastline just cuts through it. And if we cannot build a building over here, because essentially the building will be half in the sea, which is clearly not the case. It's got a bunch of wetlands over here, probably marshlands and mangroves of the sort, which can be better defined. So we'll have to edit this in conjunction with the coastline. There's a jetty over it. It's probably a wharf. So yeah, this is a ferry route. So while this is going into the city, this is clearly not the best representation. You can't have a road going out into the ocean like this unless it's supposed to be flooded. It's clearly not supposed to be flooded. even this village of Westby, the town of Westby is not sufficiently mapped. You've got the national highway here. You've got this road. So now this is the problem with offset. So this road was probably edited a while back now. What we can do is let's just quickly check the history here. All right, so the first version was created in 2018. It was updated on the same day in 2018. Now the problem is imagery is subject to a bunch of shifts here and there, so we will have to compensate for that. This natural wood, that's clearly not the case, because the natural wood, if you see, it ends over here. So a lot of these features again that are already there are sometimes imports, where they're just taken from some source which is available from the government or some publicly available data, and this is often not very spatially accurate. The accuracy is way off, and you can see here. So you can see that it cuts through some terraced, beautiful terraced farming, but probably the wooded area ends around here. So that's an adjustment that we're going to have to do. There's a few tracks there. We can choose whether we want to map these or no. Some of these are just local footpaths, which may or may not be of much importance. Sometimes it's okay to not map every single thing you see if you feel it doesn't have sufficient importance. So while it's great to have every single thing that you see on the imagery on the screen over here mapped, it's up to you of what you want to do with it. So often it's prioritized, right? Let's prioritize what you want to do, because you see a few villages over here. So we'll have to get some sources. Let's pull out some sources to figure out what this particular village is. Now the thing is that we have to be very careful when we use other sources for things like naming or trying to figure out what we see over here, because the sources may or may not allow it, right? There may be some government sources, maybe some private sources, maybe some other companies who do not explicitly allow others, especially in OpenStreetMap, say, to use this data to enrich our database. So we need to be careful. We'll explore those as well. We'll leave these ones which are completely unmapped for some time, which is slightly later, so that by the time we can explore what sources we can use. I'll also show you probably how you can add your own imagery layer. For India, for example, the JOSM database, which is published by the government in the public domain, is very rich. It's a rich source, and some members of the community, I believe PlaneMad, they've published the data sets and even an imagery service that we can overlay instead of Bing, where we can probably try and get some information. All right. So this was the introduction to the Let's Map series. In the next series, we will start with mapping some of the roads that we see over here. Maybe we'll do a couple of buildings and some adjustments here and there. So join me tomorrow for the next episode. Thank you.